Welcome. This is Corey Angela. Welcome to the End of Slavery Summit. I am here with Nate Kapp. Nate Kapp is an independent researcher, symbolist, public speaker, founder of the Cubby Hole website, host and editor of the Cubby Hole podcast, with specialized skills in graphics and esoteric art. He teaches many different subjects, including like natural law and morality, and he breaks it down too. I like the fact he has a podcast. A lot of people like to listen to podcasts. You can check it out on his website, cubbyhole.com. And his goal is to de-occult knowledge for the layman and to help reduce slavery, align in truth, and generate freedom. Thank you very much for joining me here. We also have a presentation, and we're going to talk about aiming for freedom. So how do we introduce this to our audience? Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey, for giving me this awesome opportunity to share my work here at the End of Slavery Summit. I think it's really cool what you're doing. I really commend you for all the work that you've put into this, and I'm really just very inspired. And, you know, I helped, I don't know if you're familiar with the SEED conference that Brandon and I and Douglas Martin put together, but,
Yeah.
you know, we really put a lot of work into that, and to see other people starting to do similar things and getting more people involved is just it's very, you know, it's mind blowing, and it's very, very, very awesome to see so many people really pushing themselves and getting their voices heard, and you know, getting other, you know, you and other people getting more voices to hear themselves so they can actually go out and start doing their own work too, because there's a lot of people that haven't really been putting out too much of their own work until they give a presentation. And I was kind of one of those people. So my name is Nate Kapp, and today I would like to give everyone a simple symbolic breakdown of the aim for freedom. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into it. So what does it mean to aim? Well, the first definition says to calculate with a view to action, plan, right? So basically, it's about making sure to know what we're aiming for, what we're shooting for, or, you know, what we're getting ready for. And this is about setting our sights on a particular goal, okay? So then the second definition says a purpose or thing intended, okay? So when we're, you know, aiming at a target, it's because we intend to hit the target with, you know, some kind of purpose, you know, which gives it some kind of purpose to the aim, okay? Now, the aim is very important, but now what does freedom mean? And this is a very, very big term. There's lots of ways to understand this word. I really recommend anybody who is really striving for freedom to go study especially the philosophy behind freedom. But what I want to share right now are a few points, a few definitions that I think will really help sum this up, especially in the way that I'm presenting it, which is first the etymological definition of freedom. The one that I found, I think, really resonates the best, says power of self-determination. So this means, you know, one's own will or power without external influence. And then you have the state of free will. So to be able to freely make a choice, right? And then emancipation from slavery. So basically to set free from the control of another, okay? And then we're going to move on to this very vague definition of freedom, which states the quality or state of being free. And this is an important definition because it uses the word free. And so we go further and we look up what does the word free mean in the context of human freedom. And basically, it states to not be ruled by another and to not rule over another. So it's very simple, okay? And it's about this word free. It really means to be free from being in thrall, to be a slave of another, right? Now, what this presentation, what I intend to do with this presentation, the first part that what I'm intending to do is to help simplify the hero's direction, the individual, you, okay? The direction in life from darkness to light through symbol. So basically to give a, short, simple presented way through symbol to illustrate how to transcend from, ignorance and darkness towards truth and light, towards freedom, okay? And then the second part is to help trace out the important aspects of self that can further develop true sovereignty, to help us find true purpose, what the actual true purpose is in life as a human being. And then third is to help connect the sacred sciences of consciousness and origins and history in order to understand the present day and the why, the overarching why, the why things are the way that they are, because it's about understanding causality, okay? Because once we understand causality and the effects all through history, we really start to understand why things are the way they are, why we are the way we are, okay? So the word symbol means to compare one thing with another. And there are many ways to understand symbolism. There are other definitions of symbolism, and I highly recommend anybody who is not familiar with symbolism to go study symbolism more because, or study the other definitions more, because the more well-rounded we are in symbolism, the more we can really start to understand the world that we live in better. And also, I think that this is the best way to describe what a symbol is, because it's about just diving right into the symbolism. Just go right for it. Really engulf yourself into what they mean, their history, their heritage. And if you see right here in this slide, we have a similarity between all three of these symbols, okay? So the symbol in the middle is what's known as the circled dot, or the point within a circle, okay? And this is a pure form, which I'm going to get into in the next slide. But basically, this is where the other symbols come from. So the more that we understand the other symbols that have a similar form, then the more we'll understand this pure form of this symbol. And if we look to the right and we see the, what most people know as the bullseye or the dartboard, this is a very simple material way to understand the circled dot, okay? Because this is something everybody can see. Most people have probably played darts. Most people have probably, I wouldn't say most people, but I'm sure quite a few people have or are familiar with bow and arrows, or shooting firearms. What you're trying to do is you're trying to hit the target, right? You're trying to the goal of playing darts is to hit the target because that's the hardest place to hit, right? So, truth and freedom are hard to hit. It's a hard thing to hit. So just keep that in mind. But the point is that if you play darts, typically if you get really good at your form, then you're more than likely going to be able to hit the bullseye over and over and over, or get close to it, right?
Mm.
But this is how we understand the simpleness of the circled dot, okay? Because it's about the aim in the middle. Okay, so this is what the whole, if you can really just keep your mind on the target, the middle point, then you'll start to really understand the title for this presentation. But if you look over to the left, you'll see the zodiac. Now, the zodiac is very, very dense in information. So the more that we understand the information that goes into the zodiac, whether it's through astrology or astronomy, or even what I consider to be the most important, which is astrotheology, this is a very, very powerful symbol when we understand that the sun is at the center of the science of this symbol. So, excuse me. So if we see, obviously, if you're looking at it, you see that the sun is on the cross, right? And this is because all of the houses of the zodiac, all the months of the year, are the sun is centered in the middle. Why? Because the sun goes through the houses. This is part of understanding the solar mythos. This is about understanding the solar cycle in a yearly cycle. Okay, because the more that we can understand this, then the more we will understand when to plant and when to harvest. We'll understand the journey of consciousness, because it's part of the hero's journey. And then, we will, see how the sun goes to its lowest point and to its high, the lowest point in the winter solstice, and then goes to its highest point in the summer solstice. Now, I'm not going to get, this isn't all about astrotheology, but the point is to understand that the sun is at the center. The sun is the focal point. It's the light, right? Now, the pure form of the circled dot, or the dot within a circle, or the point within a circle, is about understanding the pure form of the circled dot to help us understand the underlined meaning within other symbols that are made of circles with dots or focal points in the middle. Okay, so as you can see, there are the zodiac wheel, and then you have the religion wheel, all the, basically all the major religions, and then you have, I just put the bullseye. And one thing I want to say about the bullseye, and I'm kind of going to get into this a little bit later, but it's also there's a very esoteric meaning behind this, and I'm not going to necessarily get into it on here, but you'll start to really understand it more as you listen to the more of the information that I'm about to share. Okay, so how do we better understand this circled dot? Well, the easy way to understand this is we simply gather and study its knowledge. Any kind of knowledge that we can get of this symbol, or any symbol. And if you're trying to understand any symbol, it is really good to go get as much knowledge as possible about the symbol, so that way you have a better understanding of what it holds, what kind of information is in that symbol, and understand that there's esoteric and occult meanings behind these symbols. So And I'm going to get into the esoteric part as well, but
Yeah.
we have to be able to um, understand the history behind this symbol. And there's a lot of heritage, a lot of history behind this circled dot. And then if you are also looking at the common sense aspects of this symbol, things that you can relate to once you really start to understand, especially the sacred and feminine energy in our world. Okay, so basically, if you want to understand the dot, um, this is the masculine energy, and then the circle is the sacred feminine energy. And I'm going to really get a lot more into that on the next slide, but it's very important to pay attention to the common sense aspects. And then, what is the circle dot compared to? Well, I just showed you a lot of that, and I'm going to continue to show you more as I progress. And then lastly, its form. Okay, so it's a circle, it's a dot. That is very important to pay very close attention to. It goes without saying, I would say, but basically that is what we really have to, if we really want to understand this symbol better or any symbol better, we have to pay attention to its form. Okay,
Mm.
now this and if you have anything you want to say during this
No.
presentation, please
Yeah.
feel free.
I just think it's really interesting because, some people don't realize how there's symbols everywhere around us. And in a circle, we usually commonly consider as like this most basic symbol that even people will go into archetypes and say, a symbol like a circle is different from that of a square. Square is rigid, it has edges, whereas a circle is about completeness and unity. And I think that's interesting because what we're trying to find here when we relate this to slavery and freedom, which, by the way, a lot of people don't look at the slavery part, they look a lot at the freedom part. They forget that there is an opposite condition which can help well round their worldview. But it seems to me like we can create a blueprint of what freedom is, of what slavery is, based on breaking it down, just like you are doing with this archetypal symbol. And if there's symbols everywhere that are influencing people, and Carl Jung and all these psychologists are like, this is getting to people's minds and their subconscious, well, how do we know what it's doing to us if we don't know what the symbols are? So,
Absolutely.
and when you talk about like, well, this is a blueprint, and by understanding the blueprint, we can understand all these other symptoms, if you will, all these manifestations of that blueprint. I think of building a simple chart. In schools, we do this all the time. Let's build a chart and let's make a chart for this or that. If I want to make a chart to show any demographic or any particular statistic, I'm going to first come up with a blueprint. Like, how am I going to make that chart? Is it going to be a pie chart? Is it going to be a, a graph? But that goes by certain rules and that is structured a certain way. So for me, I see this these are just some of the ideas that come to mind when you talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have no idea how much this works on the subconscious. And the more that we study symbolism and cymatics, um, the governing principle of sound, like how sound can vibrate and make symbols out of, like, if you've seen the plate that vibrates a certain frequency and you see the symbols
Hmm.
or the shapes form because of the sound. I mean, we're made of water, and we are well, mostly, but we are affected by symbols all the time, and we don't recognize it. But the more that we become conscious of it, the more that we gain our power back as sovereign human beings.
Hmm.
But this next slide, I think, is one of the most important of the slides that we're going to see on this in this presentation, which is the circled dot being split up dualistically. Okay, so if you see on the left, you have the dot, and on the right, you have the circle. Okay, so if you can just think in your mind the dot on the left being a masculine principle, the sacred masculine principle, the dot on the right being the sacred feminine principle. So if you hold that in your mind, you're going to understand a lot more of what I'm about to break down here. So if we understand electricity and magnetism, Okay, so you have electricity being the dot, represented by the dot, and then you have magnetism represented by the circle. This is about understanding electromagnetism when they are combined. Okay, so that is the circle dot can be known as electromagnetism. Then we have Taoism, or with the Tao symbol. Now, the Tao symbol everybody knows as the yin yang. Okay, and I'm not trying to confuse anybody, but when you understand the yin energy and the yang energy, this is the same. This is the same principle. The circle dot is the same principle. Okay. Now I know you can differentiate between the two, but uh, overall, it is about understanding that the masculine and feminine and the balance. Okay, because the masculine and feminine yin yang symbol is about balance, right? Well, it's the same thing with the circle dot. The dot in the middle is the balance, right? Between the circle, between the 360 degrees. So that's very important to pay very close attention to. But I'm not trying to confuse anybody. So you have to understand the difference between the symbols, especially how they look. Now, the circle dot is also the torus. Okay, so when you think of the torus fields, the fields, the torus fields around the earth, the torus fields are in and through us and out of us, right? The torus, if no one's familiar, is a shape like a donut. So it's an invisible force, energy force, like a donut, right? You have energy that's going in and energy that's going out. And this is a combination of the whole of the universe, and it's also it's or the field, right? And then you have a center, right? So the center and the whole coming together, creating the torus. And then you have the cone. Okay, so this is a two-dimensional view over the circle dot is a two-dimensional viewpoint of the cone. So if you're looking at a cone where the circle, the sacred feminine aspect, is like if you were to put a cone on a table, rested on a table, the circle would be on the table and then the point would be towards the top, right? So you have the whole of the cone and you have the point. Now, the cone is a very powerful symbol in and of itself, especially the invisible form of the cone. If we're really going deep into the mystery traditions, especially in Freemasonry, okay, then if you want to understand the universe, the one verse, you have the uni and then the verse, the one music, right? Well, it's not. I always try to make sure I tell people I don't believe in the multiverse. I only believe that there is one verse. It only makes sense that way. But I'm not trying to make a whole nother topic here, but the point is to understand you have the one and then you have the void. So the void is the creative, sacred feminine principle, right? And once we understand that the one is within the void, it is the universe. It is the whole. It is the whole universe. And so you can look at the circle dot as a symbol of the universe. And then below that is the bullseye. And this is what I kind of already covered already, but the circle without the target is aimless. And this is very important because if we are going through life without a target, without a focal point, then we are going aimless and we don't have a bullseye. We don't have a target to hit. And so when you bring that aimless circle to the target, or the target into the aimless circle, now you have the bullseye. Now you have something to focus on. And then below that is alchemy. And I believe that alchemy is known as the oldest, or the circle dot is known to alchemy as the oldest of that symbol. So alchemy goes all the way back because it's all about understanding that it is darkness of the circle, right? We start out in the circle, and then we move, we elevate, we become in, once we become enlightened by doing the shadow work and raising in consciousness, we're moving towards light. We're moving towards gold, because that's the goal, right? And so alchemy is, and a lot of people know alchemy to be this a physical thing, and that's very important too. Turning base metals in, or dark metals into gold, and that's important to understand. How that's an important way to understand alchemy, but this is about understanding how I'm describing it is the spiritual understanding of alchemy. And now below that, the circle dot also represents the all in within the all. Okay. So the all is made out of what? It's made out of nothingness, right? The circle. And it's also made out of somethingness, because you can't have somethingness without nothingness, right? So it is the all symbol, the all encompassing symbol. And then that leads me to the all seeing eye, because the womb of creation creates the light. And that is how we are able to see. And this is about understanding the all seeing eye of the creator. Okay. So the all seeing eye of the creator is also another ancient symbol. Okay, this has been around for hundreds of thousands of years, as far as I know. But this is a very powerful symbol to understanding the all-seeing eye, the circle dot as the all-seeing eye. Okay, and then once we understand the solar mythos, meaning the sun mythos, that has been around for well over 40,000 years or more. The sun, this circle dot is a solar symbol. Okay, so we have to understand the SUN and the SON phonetically being the same. Okay, because it's about the circle of the sacred feminine receiving the sacred masculine light. Okay, so you put the point into the sacred feminine, and then, or you impregnate the sacred feminine, and now you have a sun of light, because it's about understanding that the sun is a masculine principle, because it's light, and light is a masculine principle. Okay, so this circle dot represents both the SUN and the SON. It is a solar symbol. And then, of course, underneath that, we have the universal. It is the symbol of the universal cause. And the universal cause is unified. It is a unification of the passive cause and the active cause, which is the life force in the universe. Okay, so this is a very, very powerful symbol to understand, and there's so much more to this. There's so much more to this symbol, but I'm breaking it down, the aspects of the dot and the circle, to really help anyone gain some kind of insight, so that way you really know what you're getting yourself into, and you know where I'm going with this. Okay, and the next slide is, what is the point of all this?
You're getting to the
literally,
point.
what is the point? Right. The point is clarity. It literally is clarity. The point literally is light. It is focus, is a focal point, right? This is where we find meaning. This is where we find purpose. This is where we find balance. And the knowledge that we gain about this circled dot, this point within a circle, is going to, especially along with morality or natural law, then we'll understand that it is the right direction, because it's going in the direction of truth. And going in the direction of truth is going in the direction of love. So the point is love. That is the point. And then we manifest freedom at the point. Okay? So then the next slide, I say I'm showing the point in the circle as the light and the void. So to be in the state of void means to be without light. So the circle without the point is the void without light. So to be in the dark, to be without knowledge. And to be without light means to have no aim, because you have no target, right? So to be, again, if you have no aim, then you're in a state of ignorance.
Right.
And the point is light. The point is light, which is love. That is love. The point of all, the point of life is love. So to recognize that in ourselves, to aim for freedom is love. To aim for truth is love. To bring knowledge to the information and, go on this inward hero's journey. The point is the hero, because it's a spiritual journey within the self. And once we go through the dark and take that point with us, this is the aim. We're taking the aim, taking the point and putting it in the circle. We're putting that in the circle of ignorance, the darkness, and we're bringing light to that. And so that's where our shadow work is done. Now, the next slide is a little bit redundant, but I really think it's very important to understand the circled dot as the cone, the two-dimensional cone, the overhead view. And then you have the flat view, right? And then you have the 3D cone, which is the point raised, okay? And then there's a little bit of wordplay or green language where the cone is C with one. It's literally the letter C with the word one, to see with one, because it's about conal vision. It's about being able to see with conal vision, because we literally have conal vision. And this, to see with one, is to see the point. So if we don't have our third eye turned on, if we don't have our pineal gland working and taking responsibility and trying to envision, trying to use our imagination with the sciences that we come across, we're not really using our three-dimensional cone. We're not using our conal vision within our imagination with our pineal. And this is very powerful information, because it's about a focus on how to raise ourselves from the lower to the higher, because it's alchemy. The next slide is about comparative religion. And comparative religion is very, very important, because especially in the realm of the esoteric, because the outer edges, or the outer way that most people understand religion, is either, I would say, mostly, super skeptical atheism or super extremist religion, like Christianity or Judaism or Islam. And the more that we bring knowledge to the information, the more that so if we understand that esoteric is the inner, it's about understanding the inner self. You're going deeper within yourself to do eclectic homework on the religions, especially the major religions, and most of those are all of them are on that wheel right there, especially institutionalized religions. These religions have a lot of truth in them. And a lot of people just throw this information out, but we can learn so much from each one of them. And the more that we understand morality, natural law, the more we really start to see the beauty in these religions. So, and plus, the more esoteric homework that we do on these religions, the closer to truth we get. And I'm going to explain what I mean by this with more symbolism.
Well,
Okay.
I do want to say religion is something that a lot of people tend to talk about. They might get stuck on the outside part of the circle, you know.
Right.
I think there's a lot of symbolism we can connect to the circle that you've been talking about. Even just talking about finding our inner self, it's like sort of saying like we need to find our inner point. Leslie Powers says our locus of control. Trying to find out where is it that we are in control. And, some people might look at religion and say, there's this soul, this is the deepest part of who you are. That is that dot. And it's pure and it's clear. And it's like, that's this dot you're explaining. I think, yes, there is a lot of connections and people are very quick to throw it out. There was deism that existed in the 1700s and that just went out the window because they didn't have any churches or anybody funding them, because they were teaching people to say, hey, we can understand there's God without the need of one particular way of getting there. And I think those ideas are starting to come back. You're right. There's just so much that we can learn from it. All the time I see that there's people historically who used religion in the case of ending slavery, the abolitionists. Some of them were pretty religious. But just because there's a lot of great elements within it does not make it all the truth, right?
Right.
Because we might think, oh, well, this is really helpful. Oh, this is really beautiful, like you said. And we get so focused on that we still are not at the point that we need to get to. We're close to the
That's
point,
right.
but are we still heading toward that point, or are we going to say we already figured it out and there's no more to figure out? Just figured to put that out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Very well said. And I'm going to continue basically going in the direction that you're talking about. So, one of the most amazing ways of understanding this circled dot is the round table. Okay. So, I put the circle dot above this round table just to really give you the idea of a round table, literally, where people are surrounding it and sitting at it and sitting across from each other. And the dot is in the middle. Now, if you look to the right, this is about understanding the King Arthurian round table. And this is a very, very powerful archetype to understand, because when we look at the chalice or the grail, the cup in the middle, I like to liken this. I mean, it is the truth. But the way that we can understand this is if you look at the knights, I'm going to call these people the Knights of the Round Table, because I'm not really sure if those are the knights, but you just have to understand the archetype. You have to understand the story, the science. These people standing around this cup, if you look at the cup as truth, they each person at that table has a perception of that cup. So that means that they're all looking at the same thing, but they each only have their perception from their viewpoint. And what this means is, let's just say that everybody at the round table cannot move around the table. And you just kind of think about what I just showed you with the religion wheel, right? This is, I like to look at this as, what if each one of these people represents a religion in the world? And what they're trying to do is, or, let's just say Corey and I are sitting at that table, and what we're trying to do is understand the truth better. Well, what do? If we can't move around the table, well, we can ask other people what they have studied about the perception that they see of that cup. And we write that down, we take note. It doesn't mean that we believe it. It doesn't mean we believe what they're saying. It just means we're taking note to help better understand. We're being investigators. We're investigating. We're becoming detectives to look at the other side of the different perceptions of the cup to have a better understanding. And the more that we do this, the more work we put into asking other people across from us and beside us what they're seeing, the more we're going to have a well-rounded idea of what that thing is, what that cup is, what the truth is. Okay. So I think I really love the round table for that idea, because the more that we understand how to eclectically look for the truth, the more we're going to understand this symbol. And, just hearing that story should help inspire anybody to want to be more eclectic in their work and know that they have to go in places that they feel uncomfortable going. And so then this brings me to the next slide with the zodiac. Now, the zodiac I kind of already covered, but the point is to understand that this focal point of the sun is so key in understanding that the sun represents light. And to understand that if we can learn astrotheology, learn the science of astrotheology, then we can really start to understand what not only the dogmas that are in this science, because there are dogmas, because this, if you go far enough back, and I'm not going to get deep into this, but you can really start to see the fights or the overlapping of the priest class, and then you'll start to see how our time has, the error in time, how that came about, and you can really start to see how man is anthropomorphized, or how God is anthropomorphized as man. And it's a very interesting science, because once we start to understand that, we can get past the dogma and start to realize where all these stories are coming from. And I would say astrotheology really has a lot of the most important stories, because we are all still under this big solar mythos, solar cult umbrella, which is a whole nother story. But the point is, again, to recognize the science as you being the hero, because it's about, the sun rising as a rebirth in the spring, and then going to the Most High in the summer, being akin to our consciousness being raised in light. And then, because of the law of rhythm, or the principle of rhythm, we also fall, just the same as, the fall equinox, where the sun is going to its lowest point, and then eventually to death, right? Which really is just, there is death, yes, but there's also rest. It's about going in the underworld as well. So there's so much more to this symbol as astrotheology, but I'm really just trying to whet people's appetite with these symbols that we need to really invest time into, to in order to understand the pure form of the circled dot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why it's so important, why the focus is right in the middle at the light.
Right.
And and then of course, the sun, the SON or the SUN being at the crosshairs or on the cross in the middle, should tell a lot of people, or tell people a lot about how powerful this symbol is, especially as an allegory for what people have historicized about a man that was actually on the cross. And I don't ascribe to that, but I understand that it is very important science that we really need to take more serious.
Right.
Okay. Now the circle dot, anybody who possesses occult knowledge of the circle dot will discover many important hidden treasures that have the potential to reconnect much of the ancient wisdom that has been either lost or sequestered, hidden for hundreds of thousands of years. And, this symbol can be used to trace ourselves out all the way back into antiquity, to help us really understand the present day and to understand our sovereignty. So now we're going to move on to the slide with the pencil. And this is a really, really cool archetype, physical archetype that we can share with others in trying to understand the circle dot as a two-dimensional symbol and a three-dimensional symbol as the cone. So when we think about the pencil, the pencil is, when it's unsharpened, it is dull, right? So a dull pencil is akin to a dull mind, right? You can't use the pencil because you're dull. You can't use your mind because it's dull. You can't use the pencil because it hasn't been refined yet. It hasn't been sharpened. But once you start to sharpen it, the more clear the way that we write is, the more refined a pencil is, a wooden pencil especially, the more that we start to see the point of the pencil, right? And this is what creates the three-dimensional circled dot or the cone. So this is the same in our mind. And so as we refine the pencil, as we refine ourselves, then we find clarity. Mm-hmm. The point starts to be raised out, right? Or raised up. And this is about alchemy. So the pencil going from, and it's interesting because it has lead, right? So a darkness of lead. But the point is that you, in alchemy, you're going from base, unrefined, to refinement, to a point. And this is where we start to see enlightenment in ourselves, symbolically, of course.
Yeah, it also becomes more useful, the pencil.
That's right. Yeah, we become more useful as we go towards the center, as we start
we have a purpose.
Right. We start to find the purpose. And then moving on to the slide that says spiritual path at the bottom. So the circled dot, when we lay the spiral on the circled dot, because that's really what it's about. You're not going to just go directly to the point. Life is a spiral. So it's about discovering truth through the spire ritual. And we're all part of the spire ritual. And the spire ritual is just two compound words that come from spiritual. When we break spiritual down, that's what we get, the spiral ritual, because that's what spire means. And so this is a very, very powerful way of understanding how we are going through life, because if our focus is on truth, then we're going in the right direction. We're going in the direction of freedom. We're going in the direction of clarity. And this is when we're aligned to natural law, that means we're going in the right direction. We're getting closer to the point of life, to the purpose of life. But if we're moving away from that, if we're moving away from truth, or if we're stagnating on the outer edges of the circle, we stay in darkness, or we move towards darkness. We move towards ignorance.
Right.
And when we're going in this direction, we're going the wrong direction. And this is what enslaves us. This is what creates slavery, because we're going through life aimlessly with no point, no purpose. And this is also because of, the belief in moral relativism, because we're going in the wrong direction. If we're moral relativists, then we're staying in darkness and ignorance because we believe that there's no such thing as right and wrong, and we can just go through life aimlessly, and who cares? And this is never going to get us towards truth. This is never going to get us towards freedom. This is never going to take us in the right direction. And this is also part of understanding that if we're staying on the outer ring of the spire ritual, if we're never, going on that spiritual path, it's because we're staying in our base desires. We're staying at a low frequency. And this is ultimately what is going to continue to not only enslave us, but raise the fires of hell a lot higher, so to speak. And this is a very, very powerful image that we can etch into our mind, into our heart, to help us, guide us in the right direction. So this is extremely. I tried to make this as simple as possible, because the more that we can make this information simple, the more I think it resonates with people. And this spiral of life is something that most of us don't even know that we're partaking in. Mm-hmm. And once we start to align with this spiral, we'll start to find balance in ourselves. We'll start to find equilibrium. And that's a very beautiful thing to awaken to, because equilibrium is where we find agape and love,
right?
A higher form of love. And again, this is what manifests freedom. This is what gets us away from slavery.
There's also spirals in nature. This is not like you can see spiral structures all over nature in many different forms. So I'm sure that has some symbology too. Something that also came to mind is the idea that if you're on this outside circle, we talk about subjectivity versus objectivity. Well, if we have an objective, we are looking toward the objective. We're trying to get clear as to what the knowledge is of morality. There's a lot of people nowadays who think it's all subjective. Everything's according to whim, what people believe. Well, of course, if they're on the outside layer of the circle and they don't seek that center, they don't have an objective. So I have a phrase. I say, if you're looking toward the objective, you have an objective. If you're looking toward the subjective, you are the subject. You're the slave. Because you're willing to accept things that come to your life, whether they're true or not, whether you have knowledge of them or not. And most people, they live by some sort of principles. They live by some sort of guidelines. Well, how do we get to the center of the circle? Some guidelines.
Absolutely. And something you just said really clicked with me when you said the spiral in nature, because immediately I thought about the hurricane. So it's kind of interesting, when you're getting closer and closer to truth, it does get hard. It is not an easy journey to discover truth. Right. And we do come across a lot of bumps in the road, big bumps, big obstacles in the road that keep us from getting all the way to truth. And when you think about a hurricane, it is calm in the middle, right? So it's like, just imagine yourself going through like the outer edges of a hurricane. Well, the winds aren't as strong at first, right? But once you get close to that center wall of wind, it is so damn hard to pierce that. And that is really what it's about. There is a sacrifice that we have to take on this spiritual path, and it's not easy. This is not an easy thing, and this is why most people run away from it, because they do not want to face that inner wall.
Yeah.
They don't want to face those obstacles in the road.
But the problem is then in the hurricane, and we don't want to see them get hurt. That's why we're sharing this information, because otherwise, if they're not in that center, they're all over the place. There's chaos. They don't know what's going on, and that is moral relativism. I mean, that is not knowing truth or having knowledge of what is slavery, what is freedom.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to go ahead and finish off my presentation with this last slide. And if we want to understand freedom, then we must learn what prevents freedom. And that takes a lot of work to do. I mean, that is part of the great work. That is a big chunk of the great work, to understand what prevents freedom. So we must learn as much about its opposition, which is all forms of slavery, including spiritual and intellectual slavery, not just chattel slavery, which is what most people understand slavery to be. But the goal is to become an abolitionist, to basically abolish and refuse all forms of slavery. So that concludes my presentation, and I thank you again for allowing me to present this work. It really means a lot to me, and I'm definitely ready for any questions or
Awesome.
anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah, I think we can finish on one last question, which would be your personal experience of how you aim toward that center of the circle, may you say. And, I think it also is symbolic for the sense that, I'm talking to a lot of people about their experience with statism. Well, take a look at that symbolism you mentioned before, where there's people sitting around the table and they're all looking at the cup, right? And everybody's got a different perspective on that. So we all find freedom and find this knowledge sometimes through different paths, although we have the same goal and the same end ultimately. So how did you escape statism, and how long were you a statist roughly?
Well, the way that I look at it is and this is kind of funny because, when I was a kid, I was taught by my grandfather, who I loved deeply, that he used to take me down the street to the local police station, and they would give me, a little badge, and I would wear that and tell my parents, like, oh, I'm going to be a police officer when I grow up. And I was like 6 or 7 years old. I had no idea what I was talking about. But I knew that they were heroes in my eyes, because of, I was always told that they were the ones who fight bad guys. And that's what I believed. And of course, it didn't take very long to realize that these people were not heroes, because they would constantly show up at my house that I grew up in and harass my family and harass people I knew, and take people to jail for, the stupidest things. And he threatened to, I mean, they even, when I was a young kid, me and my sister were playing on the front porch, and she called my neighbor a fart head. And then he called the police on us, and the police came, and they basically they came right up to us and told us that if we were to call our neighbor a farthead again or any other name, that they were going to handcuff us and take us to jail. Now, obviously, I don't know that they would have actually done that, but who knows? The point is that I really hated them after that point,
Mm.
and but more so not just because of that, because I saw the way that they treated people and the way that they responded when my little friend was getting beat up by an adult, just wailing on him, and the police just showed up late and didn't care, and basically were just like, well, he probably deserved it, kind of thing. And so I would say from a very early age, I've always been anti. I don't know. I guess maybe for the first like maybe 4 or 5 years of my life knowing about police, that I was kind of for them, or like for any type of order followers or law enforcement. I never took to them past my teens. I really despised them, and I never wished anybody to be arrested. And I think that is probably why I am the way that I am. I'm not as vocal about that yet, because I feel right now with my work, I'm just really trying to get out a lot of very important information, and then I'll get to that as I
Right.
progress. But I would just say that, most of my life, I have not been a status at heart, but I definitely would say that maybe by default, because of my ignorance, that I believed a little bit in uh, some of the laws, but not really. I think more so, I was just kind of thinking, well, if the laws work on people who are bad, then I guess it's okay, uh, which
Mm.
it doesn't work that way. So for the most part, and I don't know, I don't really have the best answer for you on that.
No, it's okay. And some people might say too, like, well, some policemen can be good, but I think the point is that we're talking about their policemen. Not the fact that who they individually are. We know that each individual is different, but that sort of contradicts what they're trying to do, because they're saying everybody who commits this certain action is bad. And is that action bad, or is it bad because it's written on a piece of paper? Because most of the time, they're going to follow the commands of what's put on the piece of paper or what's told of them to do. And is
Yeah,
that actually what is right for them to do?
yeah, it's
So,
definitely not right.
yeah. So thank you for sharing that experience. I mean, yeah, there's many different angles you can take from it. I know myself, I was more involved. And I say to people, I was the most obedient statist. I didn't not follow orders. I always followed orders. So for me to end up where I am, I think it's kind of interesting. And I've run into other people who had the same experiences, and other people, they're very rebellious at a young age. But either way, it's like we're finding the truth because we are looking for it. We
Absolutely.
have an open mind.
Well,
So.
I definitely like to hear about your story sometime.
Yeah, I have a video about it. You can check it out. But I thank everybody for watching. I hope they check out your stuff, your podcast as well. Like I said, a lot of people like to listen to podcasts. And you also have some good videos out there, too, presentations as well. Like you also said, you worked with the Seed Conference. Definitely people can check that out if they want to see a lot more speakers. And there's a lot of speakers, of course, in this event. So if anybody wants to see a lot more speakers like you, they can go to nita.one/summit, nita.one/summit. This is the end of Slavery Summit. Thank you very much for watching. Go to cubbyhole.com for more of Nate Cap's work. That's cubbyhole.com. And he also has some channels by the name of Nate Cap. Thank you very much for joining. Take care, everyone.